This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by EV Duty.
The electric revolution continues here on Test Drive as we take a look at one of the newest vehicles to hit our Canadian market when it comes to a full electric vehicle. Our spotlight is on this 2019 Kia Niro EV SX Touring. It has a 64 kilowatt hour liquid cooled battery, a 201 horsepower motor, and 629 liters of cargo space. It's actually more cargo space than on the regular Niro Hybrid, and we're going to be going over that. This Aurora Black paint is one of the 4 available paint colors here in Canada, and this is fully loaded for our market, coming in at $53,995 Canadian. We're going to be going over absolutely everything you need to know if you're in the market for this subcompact, fully electric crossover. Yes, I have been looking forward to this vehicle for quite some time now. Basically, since the first Niro came out last year, we always knew the EV and PHEVs were in the pipeline. And it's taken a little while for us to get it because the demand in Canada, and especially here in Quebec, is so high for these vehicles. There's a wait list for it. And as of right now, if you really wanted to get a Niro EV and you haven't pre-ordered it and you haven't gotten some sort of confirmation, you're going to be looking at a 2020 model year. They just aren't able to keep up with the demand because this is such a popular vehicle. Now, even though this specific vehicle, the SX Touring, is $54,000, it does still qualify for the full federal and provincial rebates here in Quebec, meaning you can save up to $13,000 off the purchase price. But how is that possible? Well, the legal requirement for the federal tax credit of $5,000 means that a manufacturer has to provide a vehicle that has a MSRP under $45,000 Canadian that seats less than 6 people. And technically you can buy the EX for $44,995. Kia is being a little bit cheeky with that though. They really only offered that trim in order to qualify for the tax rebate. They really are not shipping a lot of them over here. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people, as we've talked about previously on other episodes of PHEVs and EVs, a lot of people just don't want features. All they care about is total range, MSRP. So the base models usually end up selling a whole lot better, but they've made a whole bunch of these. So these are starting to come out. If you've got your hands on one, hold on to it. I'm really excited to be driving this around because it is so hard to come by. Even though they've put normal plates on this, if you take a look at the back, there are no green plates on this. Kia just transferred over their plates from a different vehicle. Does it make a difference if you're looking at this from a legal perspective? Absolutely not. But if people are seeing me driving this car this week, they just don't see the green plates, they're going to assume that this is any other Niro because they are very subtly different, and we'll go over that. But you do get a lot with the SX Touring over the regular EX. You gain LED headlights and LED taillights, the aero wiper blades, a sunroof, chrome door handles and side molding, splash guards, leather seating, 8-way power with 2-way lumbar support for the driver and 2 memory options, heated and ventilated seats, a heated steering wheel, heated outboard rear seats, a battery heating system with an EV heat pump, an 8-inch infotainment system with navigation, wireless charging, a 110-volt power inverter, smart cruise control, auto-dimming mirrors, LED interior lighting, ambient lighting, blind spot monitoring, lane keep assist, driver attention system, forward collision warning, front and rear parking sensors, and rear cross traffic alert. So I mean, there's a huge difference. It makes sense, right? It's a $9,000 difference between the base model and this. So it makes sense. And with that 64 kilowatt hour battery, Kia says you could do about 383 kilometers full electric without charging it up. We're going to be testing that. We're going to be seeing, since we live outside of the city, we're one of the few journalists in Montreal that are pretty far outside of the core Montreal area. We do a lot of highway driving. We do a lot of country road driving. So we don't get to use the regen braking quite as much as you would in the city. So we're going to be testing all of that. Now, the Niro EV over the regular EV has some differences, and luckily we have a long-term 2019 Kia Niro Hybrid SX Touring with us. We don't have it physically here right now, it's just out on the road. But we can compare side by side to see how they compare. So if you are interested to see what the differences are between the two, you'll know. The EV has a unique closed grille since it doesn't need to have airflow coming in, and it has unique Arrowhead LED daytime running lights. A new lower air intake system with Eco Blue surrounds are on the bottom and the back of this vehicle, very similar to what we saw with the Kia Optima PHEV we did last year, and it'd be very similar with the Niro PHEV. Kia says that these 17-inch specially designed alloy rims reduce drag and improve fuel efficiency, and the front and rear bumpers have been revised slightly over the regular Niro Hybrid. But how do the rest of the dimensions compare with this EV compared to the regular hybrid? Well, the EV is 20 millimeters longer and 25 millimeters taller. The interior dimensions are also very interesting. The front headroom is the same, but with the rear headroom you lose 36 millimeters. Front shoulder room is the same, but you lose 2 millimeters on the back. The hip room for the front and the back is the same between both vehicles. But the legroom is also different. Front legroom again is the same on the EV, but it is 36 millimeters less on the EV compared to the hybrid. Cargo capacity is also very interesting, 81 liters more on the EV, and then if you fold the seats flat in the back, you have 261 liters more space. I think what ended up happening is Kia had to move the back seats up a little bit. That's why we lose out on this dimension, so that way the batteries can fit a little bit better. But because this isn't a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid, it is a fully electric vehicle, there's less mechanical elements that goes into this. There's no fuel tank, so you can save space that way. So there is more storage capacity, though you do lose a little bit of space for the rear passengers. Other things to note on the inside when it comes to the differences, instead of using a regular gear shifter, it uses a shifter dial with a shift-by-wire system. You also have mood lighting in the center area. There's a number of different color choices for that. A large center console that you can put stuff in, as well as a cup holder area that can be sort of removed away with a USB pass-through, so you can plug in your device and keep it in that storage area. And brake paddle regeneration. We see this on pretty much every EV and PHEV system. There is an automatic mode for it, which I don't really like too much. It will automatically adjust that brake regen based on if there's a vehicle in front of you. I like to have a little bit more control of it. So you can set between 0 and 3 in terms of intensity, and then you're also supposed to be able to hold down the brake pedal to manually brake the vehicle and regen the battery as best as possible. There are 4 drive modes as well: Eco, Normal, Sport, and Eco Plus. We're going to be keeping the vehicle in Eco mode for the most part during our testing, but we will throw it into Sport mode just to see how it is. And essentially for tech-wise, feature-wise on the inside, there's only 2 major differences between the SX Touring EV and the SX Touring Hybrid. You lose the dual zone automatic climate control. It's just a single zone automatic climate control with the same driver only mode, but you also gain HomeLink. So you lose some, you gain some, and then obviously the price is quite a bit more, but with those federal rebates, you're saving some, and then the fact that you never have to go to the gas station ever again, you're going to be saving a whole lot more. But let's take the Kia Niro EV on the road, talk about how it performs, how it handles, how it feels, do all of our economy testing. It's not fuel economy, but energy economy. See how it does our 100-kilometer test loop. It'll be the first EV that we take on our 100-kilometer test loop to test, so we won't have anything to compare it to, but we'll talk about everything else you need to know if you're in the market for this near $54,000 fully electric subcompact crossover. Before we head out on our road test, we want to make sure the Kia Niro EV is fully charged. And thanks to Elmec and the EV Duty Smart Home Charger, we can get this charged from empty to full in 9.5 hours. On a level 1 charger, you're looking at a very long time to charge this vehicle, and it just doesn't make sense as a daily driver to not have a level 2 solution in your house. The EV Duty Smart Home Charger allows you to set access control, timers, and even see how much it costs to charge your car. For more information about the EV Duty Smart Home Charger or their family of electric charging solutions, visit elmec.ca. So we're doing things a little differently here today because it's raining nonstop here in our area. There's essentially nothing we can do about it. I think all week it's going to rain. But we're going to be doing some different testing with this. The last full EV that we did was the Chevrolet Bolt, and that was just at the end of winter. And during the winter, I don't like to go too far when I'm driving around just because the road conditions can change and even the areas don't get plowed as often in some areas. So we usually stay around in our zone. But now that it's the middle of summer, despite the fact that it's raining like crazy, we have an EV that we can actually test on longer distances, because here, at least in Quebec, we have a lot of level 3 chargers and they're very easily accessible along our highway routes. So I have more confidence being able to drive this down to its lower limit for battery range and knowing I'll have a place to be able to charge it up, and not only charge it up and not have to sit there for 9.5 hours to get it full, but I can get it full in about an hour and a bit on the 100 kilowatt charging mechanism that's built into this car. So we're starting in the garage because it's going to get really wet real quick. We have 2 microphones going on today as well. I'm hoping that it'll be enough to alleviate any of the road noise as well as the water noise. We have tested vehicles in the rain before, and our equipment just doesn't handle it very well. But I want to talk about this car on this portion of the road test first, and then we're going to be doing sort of a hyperlapse. You can see sort of what we're going to be doing as we're driving along. But as we've started the vehicle up, it's giving us a 456 kilometer range. That's pretty good. That's right on par with what the WLTP says when it comes to the World Harmonized Light Vehicle Testing Procedure. This vehicle should do about that. It depends though if you're stop and go traffic and you're using the regen braking, which is why Kia recommends just 386 kilometers as the total range. They're being quite conservative when it comes to that. But the WLTP thinks that they can go a little bit further. So we're at 456 right now. What I'm going to do to make sure that we get some accurate testing here, I'm going to go into our drive info, and it is reset. The unfortunate thing is there's no real trip A or trip B on Kia's products. So we have the accumulated info, so I'll still be able to see how far we've gone total, but at least the drive, everything I'm going to be doing today has been reset, and we're at 0.3 kilometers as of starting this. So we'll have a good idea how far we can go and all of that information, which is really important for buyers who want these cars. Yeah, I can talk about how great the drive is, how comfortable it is, how smooth the acceleration is, things like the interior road noise, not too bad considering it's raining here. What you might be hearing there is just raindrops coming off the trees, a little bit heavier than the actual rainfall coming down. Everything about this car is really good, but ultimately the thing that people are the most interested in is range and price, which is what we talked about at the beginning, where Kia isn't really offering the base model for this car. They want people to go up to this trim, and originally this was the only trim they were going to offer. They ended up having to offer the EX in order to qualify for the federal rebates. So it's a little cheeky, and we talked about it, but you got to do what you got to do. And I'm sure that they will start to offer more EXs probably for the next model year. I would imagine that if you take a look at sales for the Chevrolet Bolt, most of them are going to be the entry-level model. People just want the cars. They don't really care about the tech. But I mentioned when we were on the outset that there are different driving modes. We've got it in Eco mode. The drive mode button is located in your center Captain Picard console here. You can change between that. We're going to keep it in Eco mode for all of the testing that we're going to be doing right now. You do have the brake paddle regeneration. So if you push it, it'll change from level 1, level 2. We're now in level 3. It's the most braking. And then if you hold down that left paddle, it will also regen the brakes as if you were holding the paddle to stop it. We've seen that on things like the Chevrolet Volt and Bolt, and most of the electric vehicles we've tested. Not all of them have it. Something like the Chrysler Pacifica just didn't have features like that. I think it was a bit of a bummer. The only thing I dislike about it, unlike something like the e-Golf, where when you put it into the lower braking mode, it would reset after you've driven about a minute or so. With this, it stays at that level. What I usually find, the way that I use the brake paddles, is I'm coming up to a stop like the one, in about, 200, 300 meters. So maybe I'll let off the gas if there's nobody behind me. Right now, we're doing level 1. It's not bad. But if I was just braking at level 3 back there at that stop sign because I wanted to get closer to it, it's not going to be set to 3 no matter what. So you do have to play with that a little bit more. I suppose that's why Kia offers the automatic smart braking system. You have to enable it through the settings, and it's something you have to do through the little computer cluster for the driver. You can set that up that way. I'll test it a little bit more this week, but I did do some preliminary testing earlier when I picked the vehicle up, and it just wasn't for me. I didn't like the way that it worked, because in sort of the brake paddles here are useless. You can't control how much you're using, and I do prefer to be in control. So if it were up to me, at least maybe have an option to reset the brake gen back to whatever you've set, because for eco mode, you can tell it you want it to be always on level 3, or at least when you start it up. So I think it would be nice if there was an option to say when you start moving again, it will go back to your default. So if you've set it to a heavier brake regen, you don't have to stick with that and have to remember to reset it manually. It should just do it automatically, if that makes sense. Drive another EV and you'll understand what I'm talking about. The great thing about the Kia Niro EV is it takes what was great about the regular Niro that we've tested technically 3 times now. We've driven 3 different versions of the Niro Hybrid, and just makes it a full electric. And I think for daily use, for what people need out of a car, 98% of the time, this is going to be more than enough. I mean, 386 kilometer range is really good. I mean, it's on par with something like the Chevrolet Bolt. But I mean, right now we're still at 456 kilometers. I'm sure that number will change as we drive along. But man, it's more than enough for daily use. I have to go into Montreal on Mondays to drop these cars off. I picked up the car, it was about 3/4 fully charged. I mean, it's impossible to have these fully charged. If you're a journalist, you're bringing it back, you have to drive it. You can't just plug it in for 2 minutes at a supercharger. They're not necessarily near where we drop these cars off. But the point I'm trying to make is this car wasn't full when I got it. When I brought it back, it still had about half a charge left. I could have gone to Montreal again and driven home still without needing to charge the car up. So you have more than enough range for what you need out of a daily car. And if you go on a trip, yeah, okay, that's where things are going to become dicey, especially if you don't live here in Quebec. And we know that from experience because we did try to go on a road trip with the Chrysler Pacifica PHEV. And yeah, I mean, that's not like the biggest range you can get out of a vehicle, but still there was almost nowhere to charge that was convenient in Ontario. Here in Quebec, options are much better. You have a lot of level 2 charging stations throughout little towns, businesses, lots of places to stop off highways, but then there's also a number of level 3 charging stations conveniently placed, and that's key. It's conveniently placed. So it's probably one of the ones that we're going to use today if we decide we need to. Personally, I want to run this down as low as possible, and the level 3 charger that's closest to here is in Drummondville. There's also another one in Saint-Julie. Those are 2 that I've used before. We might be using one of those today if we get this down, but I want to see how far we can go, especially in crappy weather like this, because you know, for us, we always test our road test segment during a nice clear day. You want to be able to see the car in the best light. Also helps for our camera equipment. But the reality is you're going to be driving this car all the time. It's not just going to be when it's sunshine and lollipops. You need it to work when it isn't great weather as well. And that's why we're doing this today. Not by choice, but out of necessity. So we'll pick all of this up in a little while. I'm going to do a hyperlapse, show you kind of where we're driving and get you an idea of the route that we're taking and how much driving we're ultimately doing during our little drive info that we have going on here so you can see it, and then we'll pick it up probably a little bit further towards the end as we're coming down to the lower portion of our total range. Now, I know we don't really do like a run and gun style video here at Test Drive. It's just not my thing. But given how much driving I've done today and what we're kind of talking about, it's just easier just to do it this way. So we're just coming back right now with the Kia Niro EV. As we talked about on our road test, I would be going as far as possible on a single charge. And we did that. We just got back after about 5.5 hours total driving, and that's with stopping, but nowhere did we plug the car in. No level 2 chargers, no level 3, nothing. Basically stopped twice and then continued pretty much half of the drive, or a little bit more than half the drive was continuous. The other times were broken up a little bit. So let's go take a look. I'll show you that we did pretty well. Now, normally we don't keep the cars this dirty, but we just came back from the drive. We had a lot of rain on our trip, a lot of sun, a lot of dirt, lots of gunk. So the car's a little messier than usual, but you can see here, we pretty much got it right down to 0. If we step in, you'll see here, it doesn't even show a range anymore. There's supposed to be little rectangles there to tell you how much range you have left. It's 0. It's really low. It's obviously not too happy. 407.2 kilometers total is what we did with an average of 15.8 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Total time was about 5 hours and 40 minutes of driving. And you can see here, if we start it up, oh, you can see range is 4 kilometers, nearby stations. We do have one. I guess we would make it. I don't know if I really trust it. But if we go in here, you can see that we pretty much have no charge left. 54 minutes though on DC charging with 100 kilowatts, not too bad at all. So overall, I mean, we did pretty well. I would say that this is a successful test at 407 kilometers. With 4 kilometers left. Most people aren't going to be keeping it that low. You're going to be driving it quite a bit more normally, but it's a good way to test it to see absolutely how much range you can get out of this. And keep in mind too, we don't have really a scientific way to go over how that was all calculated. Like I said, 407.2 total. At least half of it was with air conditioning on. A quarter of it was with my daughter in the back seat as well, with full air conditioning, not just driver only mode. We also took a very challenging route on the second half of our drive. We took the autoroute de Canton de l'Est, which goes pretty much from the center of Montreal into just past Sherbrooke, and it's very difficult for an EV in terms of grade change. There's a lot of hills, a lot of downhill, a lot of uphill, so it's not really easy to get through that with an EV, and it's not really the one that we should have chosen to take on this, but still give us a good idea. 407, pretty darn good, considering Kia says it should be 386 kilometers. So let's continue. We'll wrap up now going over the rest of this car and tell you what else you need to know about the Kia Niro EV. It's very rare that we do two different driving segments here on Test Drive, but I felt it was important to go over some of the things that we didn't do in the first driving segment, especially a couple days after since having this car. The first thing I want to talk about is that smart brake regeneration that I mentioned at the beginning during our driving segment. I said I didn't like it and I would test it later on. We are testing it right now, and it wasn't set up correctly when I was testing it before. It actually works pretty darn well. So for example, right now we're coming up to a stop sign, I'm looking both ways, come to a full stop, and then when I go, there is a Chevy Bolt in front of me. So if I'm going just a little too quick and I let off, it will automatically slow the car down up to regen level 3. It won't stop it automatically though, so keep that in mind if you are driving along and you think that it will be just like smart cruise control where it'll automatically stop and go as traffic goes. It doesn't. You still have to stop the car fully, but perhaps if you're coming out into traffic and somebody's going a little bit slower in front of you, it will automatically adjust the brake force regeneration so that you are getting essentially the most out of it without hitting the person in front. You just still have to stop the car. So I have been using it now. It'll tell you whether there's somebody in front of you or not. Changes the little battery icon for the regen, goes from white, which it is right now since there's nobody in front of us. It will go blue if it's going to adjust automatically, and it can be set based on you. That was one of the other things I said too. You sort of lose out on the paddle shifters because it's doing it automatically. Well, you can still do it. So for example, we're in level 1 right now, coming up to a stop sign. I can manually push number 2, number 3, and I can also hold down the brake just like I would. So it should be on if you want. I mean, I don't know why I wasn't using it before, but it's a good thing to be able to test it out. And it's the whole reason why we do this show, so that we can test out these features. It's kind of my job. I'm supposed to be doing it, right? And I'm glad that I have. So it's a good feature to have. The other feature we were doing now is sport mode. Oh yeah! This thing picks up really, really quick in sport mode. We didn't do it when we were on our other driving segment. I said I would. And it kind of goes against my core beliefs of what I want out of a vehicle like this, right? I don't want to be using it in sport mode. I use it in eco mode, so I'm using the least amount of energy as possible. I want to save as much as I can when I go to charge up my car and how far I can drive, so I don't use sport mode at all. But I just want to show you how quick it is, because it really does pick up speed crazy quick. That's the whole point of having 291 pound-feet of torque. You're near the 300 mark, so of course you're going to have a lot of power instantly. And I mean, skidding the tires a little bit there as we're picking up speed. So if you really absolutely need to have the power, it's there. When I was driving this, took it back to Montreal today just to drop off another car, and I was using it to pass people just for fun, and the power's there. If you really got to pick up speed, this car has the power. And I like the sound of it too. It sounds very Star Trek-y when you go. As it skips the tires a little bit, you can hear the motor winding up. And you usually hear that with the electrics when you're going into sport mode, when you're going faster than you should be. You can hear it going, and it's a cool little sound. So just something to note there. Car is pretty quick. I wouldn't necessarily want to be dragging this car. You are still going to want to drive it as eco-friendly as possible, but it's still good to know for you guys. I know you guys like to see the performance-oriented stuff when we drive these cars.
We went over the specifics of our single charge test drive earlier, but I want to mention our final energy economy numbers. Our 100 kilometer test loop and 1124 kilometer week with the Niro EV netted us the same number, 15.8 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which works out to be about 178 kilowatt hours of usage during our week. Some of that energy would have been recharged via the brakes, but just to make our math simple, it cost us roughly $10.82 for the week at Hydro-Quebec's 6.08 cents per kilowatt hour rate. Comparing the average 4.6 liters per 100 kilometers we got on our Niro Hybrid to go the same 1,124 kilometers would have required 51.7 liters of fuel at roughly $1.22 per liter, or $63.08 in gas. We're spending about 1/5 for energy over gas with the Niro, which is an incredible savings. Over the course of a year, doing 24,000 kilometers, you'd spend about $230.55 in electricity with the EV, or $1,346 of fuel with the hybrid. But let's go a step further for Quebec residents. You're saving $1,116 per year by not going to the gas station. You also skip out on oil changes too, but this rundown will keep it simple. The Kia Niro EV's MSRP after incentives comes in at $40,995. The hybrid would be $33,495, a $7,500 difference. It would take you almost 7 years to recover that cost based on fuel alone. That number would be lower when taking into consideration 3 to 4 oil changes a year, transmission servicing, and emissions-related maintenance and repairs over that time period. Ultimately, how much driving and where you do it will affect your results, but these numbers give us a rough idea for the cost of ownership based on our internal, real-world testing. Let's continue with our likes and dislikes, as energy economy is a top like with the overall cost to charge and drive this vehicle. Our real-world testing with the total range is also a plus, as it exceeded Kia's advertised range. The available technology and features is also a solid hit for us, as the Niro provides all the creature comforts we'd want without missing anything that we'd need. The design of the Niro is also a like in our books, as it looks like a normal subcompact crossover and not a vehicle trying to be futuristic. And finally, the cargo capacity and interior space means that you can use this EV as a proper daily driver and family vehicle, not just an errand runner for a single occupant. And there isn't much to dislike about the Niro EV, even thinking back to the 3 other fully electric vehicles we've tested like the e-Golf, Soul EV, and Bolt. Kia does need to address their supply chain issues, as customers who want these vehicles have to wait months, if not longer, to get a Niro. Also, many EV buyers want the entry-level trim, which is not what Kia is focusing on, so working on bringing more EX trims to Canada would be a smart move on their part. Overall, the Kia Niro EV SX Touring offers a lot to customers with almost no compromise. It's not often that we come across a vehicle that fits our needs in such a precise way, but we finished off our week with this car with nothing but great things to say about it. Kia has truly got an EV winner on their hands. They just need to make sure they can get it into the hands of paying customers.